Hey, welcome to the Richard Sherman podcast brought to you by The Volume. I appreciate you joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe to our videos. We'll love to see you every week. Welcome back to the Richard Sherman podcast. It's that time of the year. It's not Christmas, it's the playoffs.
It certainly is, Rich. We got a playoff atmosphere across a few games. I mean, week 18, we kind of expected a lot of games to be meaningless, but there were certainly some with some meaning. Let's start in Seattle, Rich. That game came right down to the wire in OT. What are your thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks coming away with the victory?
Well, it was a had-to-have-it game, and they got it by the skin of their chins. They had to have it. Geno performed well, really emotional after the game. Their futures were still up in the air. Who knows if the season's over, if the season's not over. Geno broke a number of Seattle Seahawks records, completions, attempts, yards, completion percentage, 70%. All franchise records for Geno Smith in his first year as a full-time starter. Huge for him. Huge for the Seattle Seahawks because the Detroit Lions showed up even though they got eliminated. That was just the weirdest dynamic I've ever seen in playoff football or in the regular season.
Why do you think the NFL did it like that? I mean, in theory, it would have made more sense to have both teams playing at the same time, but they had the Rams-Seahawks kick first and then the Lions-Packers go in the evening. Why would you do it like that?
Because there was no other way to put a relevant playoff game after that. You know, there would have been no other relevant playoff games with implications after that. Outside of that, you would have put, Browns, Steelers or something after that? People would have just been watching two teams with no chance to go to the playoffs, and the ratings would have been bottom dweller. At least people watched this game all the way through because it had implications. If Green Bay won, if Detroit, and it was a competitive game, it was a smart decision by the league.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, I certainly did not expect the Rams to put up that big of a fight, but you know better than I do, these division rivalries, people get up for games that are so meaningless. Well, why was this game competitive in the first place, Rich?
It was competitive because, I mean, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, you know how that goes. Any given Sunday, every team is going to compete. Every team is going to give their best, and that's what happened. In Green Bay, I mean, Detroit's playing with a lot of pride. You know, Dan Campbell got those boys fired up, you know, and it's a division opponent. I think that was another smart move by the NFL, is making the last two games of the season, always division games, because you know those opponents the best, you know the teams the best, and you know you're gonna fight like hell, regardless of if you're in the playoffs or not. I mean, the Rams were out of it beyond elimination. Don't even have a draft pick, but they gave Seattle all they could handle just because it's a division opponent. You know them well. Jalen Ramsey played a heck of a game in that ball game. It was crazy.
The NFL playoffs are coming. If your team is in, it's going to be fun to watch. But what if you could actually be at the game? For last minute amazing deals on tickets to your favorite NFL team, check out Game Time, the fastest growing ticketing app in the US. If your team is out, no sweat. Game Time has tickets to NBA, NHL, NCAA basketball games, even concert and comedy shows too. So if you're in San Francisco and you want to see the 49ers, download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code SHERMAN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and enter SHERMAN. That's SHERMAN for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out and have some fun this week. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We saw a little bit of a homecoming with Bobby Wagner coming back to Seattle, and Jalen Ramsey had a hell of a game. And then once Seattle pulls it off in OT, all eyes are on Detroit and the Packers. I mean, everyone up in Seattle is hashtagging One Pride, rooting for the Lions more than any other city outside of Detroit. And Detroit goes on the road into a hostile environment and a need-to-have-it game for Aaron Rodgers, and Detroit wins it. I mean, the Dan Campbell, to me as a Detroiter, has changed the identity of this organization tenfold. I don't think the vibes are just different here in Detroit, Rich. They had absolutely nothing to play for, and they came out and got the dub. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the Lions. Talk to me a little bit about Aaron Rodgers, what may be going through his head right now.
I mean, it's really cool for the Lions. I mean, they're establishing winning culture. They're establishing how to win, how to show up and expect to win, how to go to Lambeau, which they hadn't won in Lambeau in a long time. I think that's only the second loss in December for Green Bay since LaFleur has been the coach. So That's insane right there. They came in there, and that's big for going into next year. I would expect them to be favored to win that division going into next year with how they've played, and hopefully they're able to get a few free agents and retool, get a few draft picks. But they look really good. It's really impressive because people were calling for Dan Campbell's job at one point. I think they were 1-7, and they go 7-1 down the stretch. That's insane. 7-1 down the stretch. I mean, only coach ever got fired after 7-1 was Flores, and he's suing the league now. So it's something to be proud of.
Well, Rich, I mean, you obviously have played in this league a long time, and a lot of these games have zero meaning. And to fans like myself and to people that play fantasy football and to fans down in Houston and Indianapolis that are watching for draft picks, and we saw a game, a relatively meaningless game where Houston plays himself out of the number 1 overall pick. Any given Sunday, I know you guys are competitors, you're paid professional athletes, but why? Like, why is there this itching desire to win when literally it only hurts your team's draft capital?
Well, you know what? I respect Lovie Smith because he was going to go out there and give it all he got. But the Houston Texans are a joke of a franchise. I mean, McNair should be ashamed of himself. It's tiring to see, them. You didn't give him anything to work with. That's like somebody going into the Indy 500 with the Prius and being like, "Oh, you didn't win it? Huh, I wonder why. Oh my God, it's your fault. It's not the car's fault. It's the driver's fault. Like you one of the worst rosters in the league. You traded away all his best players. There's not a ton of talent on that roster. You couldn't expect any success. It's almost like you set him up for failure. He's a fall guy, and they got a fall guy, and now they'll hire the coach they want to hire, who'll get a quarterback with the number 2 pick, a young quarterback, a young up-and-coming. They'll pay some free agents. They got a lot of cap space, but it's just dumb, and it's dumb to even hire Lovey for what reason, other than to just fire him a year later. There was nothing he could have done. I mean, they were competitive in just about every ball game. They were in games they shouldn't have been. They almost beat teams they shouldn't have had any reason to be in the game with. The entire time they wanted a high draft pick, so it wasn't like they wanted to win those games necessarily. They did what they needed to do to rebuild this franchise, and then you fired a coach. It's like, but that's why teams like that stay at the bottom. And I hope they never win a Super Bowl and never do anything well. I mean, because they don't deserve it.
Well, let's stay in the AFC South, Rich. I mean, we saw actually a pretty competitive game on Saturday night, and for a long moment there, thought the Tennessee Titans were going to come away with the dub. Jacksonville Jaguars come out with the win. This team looks like a team on the rise. Do you think that they have what it takes to make any sort of noise in this postseason?
No, because they have to play the juggernauts. They have to play the Buffalo Bills, and they're playing some of their best football. But it is a cool story, for Doug Peterson. With all the turmoil that the Jacksonville Jaguars were in, Trevor Lawrence, people were questioning whether he was going to be a bust. Obviously it's the modern age where you don't play well in 15 games, 16 games, it's over for. And he continued to fight. Doug Peterson deserves a ton of credit for the staff he put together. They did a great job defensively down the stretch, so that's something that's been really cool to see. The last 3 games, they've been really stout defensively. And, I mean, it's a cool story because, what you weren't expecting this. You weren't expecting Jacksonville Jaguars to win the AFC South. It's a cool story. I don't think they can go to Buffalo and do any kind of damage, but crazier things have happened.
I want to stick with the Jags real quick here because this was a team that spent a lot of money in the offseason, one of which was on their wide receiving core. I mean, they invested a ton of money into Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and a lot of people were laughing when they did so. And now it's starting to really all make sense. Rich, but one of the things I think that gets lost at the tail end of the season is these player incentive bonuses. And Christian Kirk received, I think it was $1 million this last week and getting a couple catches and close to 100 yards. What is that like going into the final week, being on a team where you have a player that is that close to player incentive bonuses? Is that something that's on everyone's mind?
I don't know if it's on everyone's mind, but I think a lot of times a good coach, it's on his mind, especially in a game that you can get it done for him. I think they want to get it done, and it's really cool when they do get it done. Obviously they're not going to compromise the well-being of the team and the overall product, to get something like that done. But if they can get it done, they will. I remember the Seattle Seahawks, there was a receiver that was like a catch away from a bonus, and they were winning a game, and it was a time where they should just be running the clock. and they did like a little one of them forward pitch passes, that no risk pass that's really like a run, but it counts as a reception, and got him his bonus. And it's really cool when teams get. It's hard to make money in this league. It's hard to win in this league. It's hard to stay healthy. It's hard enough to get here, and so it's great. I think it does something for your team when a coach shows that he's willing to do that for his players.
Let's go up to Buffalo. We saw the NFL community and the world in general, I think, kind of at a standstill last Monday night when Damar Hamlin went down. And the whole NFL community, the whole sports community rallied around him. And then Buffalo opening kickoff to the house. Buffalo kind of looked a little lethargic at times through this game, but they ended up taking to the Pats. Your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills and what they were able to accomplish in this very, very difficult week for their city and organization?
Oh, it was outstanding. I mean, it was storybook Hollywood start to that game. I mean, there's no way I don't think Belichick has ever had the opening kickoff of any game run back on his team. They're too well coached, they're too disciplined. And for that to happen, for the Buffalo Bills after a tough week like it's been, was outstanding. I mean, it lifted a lot of spirits. I think all eyes were on that game for obvious reasons. It was a beautiful moment. And then they went out and played well. Josh Allen, it's still concerning with those red zone interceptions. That's where he threw one to Devin McCourty, another red zone interception. And I want to say that's like 9 on the year. And that's been his Achilles heel all season long. He didn't play the greatest game. He obviously threw some incredible, highlight reel passes, but those red zone interceptions, when you get to the playoffs, every possession, every drive is worth something. And you can't have those plays. You can't force them in. You can't play scared. So it's not like he can just change the way he's playing now. So that's just something to look out for later on down the line. But it's really cool, man. I think we saw the best parts of humanity when everything happened. The injury happened when Damar went down, and it's really cool, because in this day and age with social media, I mean, you see the ugliest sides. You see so much division, so much separation, so much angst and anger and arguing. And I think for a moment in time, fans of different teams, people of different races, religions, everything, for one moment came together and said, "Hey, this young man needs our prayers. He needs our thoughts. He needs our help. He needs our spirit to be with him and lift him up. This game needs us. These kids that played in the game need us, and the world needs us." And it was really cool to see. I mean, for it to be early in the year, it's been a long time since we saw a beautiful moment that unifying for that many people, and we needed it. We needed it, and thank goodness he's okay, and he's up and about. He has all his neurological function. He's breathing good. His lungs are healing. And they raised a ton of money for him. That was also cool.
It is unbelievable. I mean, we know the Bills Mafia, but my goodness, man. I mean, $10 million almost to his charity. That is unbelievable. And like you said, Rich, to show the unity throughout our entire country, across sports, across all sports, for Damar Hamlin is absolutely exceptional. It did leave the NFL with a tricky scheduling proposition going into the final, couple weeks and into the playoffs. Do you think they handled it properly in terms of having the neutral site if the Bills and Chiefs reach the AFC Championship game?
Like everybody else said, there's no perfect answer for it. I mean, they did the best they could. It's fine. It's fine. It hopefully won't come down to anything like that, and I don't think it'll have an effect on the game. I think they did what they had to do in a really unique situation to make all parties happy and not to ruffle too many feathers. People. You saw suggestions about an 8th game or 8th team being in the playoffs, and that's that would have been insane. That would have been insane because, that would change the whole dynamic. You mess around and get a scenario like that and your Detroit Lions get in and they somehow beat the Philadelphia Eagles. People would be in an uproar. People would be ready to flip.
And they do it too, Rich.
And they would do it. They would have done it, Mitchell. They would have done it. I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles look very vulnerable. They were in a dogfight with some third string, New York Giants players. They didn't even play Daniel Jones. They didn't play their starters, and Philadelphia pulled out the game, but they won it by less than a touchdown, and that's a bit concerning. Now, obviously, Jalen Hurts' first game back, but if you would have got a hungry Detroit team with no Jalen Hurts rest, not a week of extra rest, nothing, no Lane Johnson, I mean, crazier things have happened, but so I'm glad they didn't do that scenario because that would have been chaotic and crazy. But I think they did the best under with all things considered. They did a pretty good job.
Well, there were some other teams watching scoreboards at the same time. We had the Steelers vying for a potential playoff bid, needing a loss with the Patriots and the Miami Dolphins, and then the Miami Dolphins simply needing a loss of the Patriots. Miami snuck in. Sneaking in is an understatement. They won 11-6. I don't even know how you score 11 points in a professional football game, but they did it. Your thoughts on Miami? I know you love the Jets, Jets, but your thoughts on the Dolphins, Rich?
I don't think Tua will see the field again this season, so I don't think there's much to talk about in this situation. I think their defense played well. I think the Jets have a lot of questions to answer. You know, people are calling for Mike LaFleur's job. I don't think that's the problem. You know, I think they're too banged up on the offensive line. They'll get Metcalf back or Becton back, and, you know, they'll get healthier. They'll get some more free agents. They're an up-and-coming team. They'll figure the quarterback situation out, and they'll be a better team next year. Breece Hall will be back. They'll be a very dangerous team in that division. But the Miami Dolphins are a really cool story. Mike McDaniel in his first year, taking them to the playoffs is really cool. It's kind of similar to the Jacksonville situation. You know, being able to take them to the playoffs and guide them, and it's been a really cool story. But I think they're going home. You know, I don't think they have a chance to win without Tua. Now, if Tua could somehow come back, which I highly doubt, maybe there'd be something there, but without him, I just don't see it happening.
No question. I mean, at the beginning of the season, did you really think Mike McDaniel had a shot at taking this team to the playoffs, Rich?
Well, I didn't believe in Tua, you know, and he, you know, I got to give him all the credit in the world. He's played outstanding. I mean, he ended up leading the league in passer rating. I want to say he was up there in completion percentage. And I knew Mike McDaniel was very creative offensive mind. I knew he could get it done. I knew he could draw it up. I knew if he got a run game, they'd be really special. I knew defensively Miami is running that zero scheme. So, you know, in any given game, it's feast or famine. So they could go blow some plays up and create a lot of turnovers, or they can go be 32nd in the league, you know, because they're just giving up a lot of explosives. But they had the personnel to do it. They traded for Bradley Chubb to help them out in the future. So they did everything they needed to do, but I couldn't have foresaw him doing exactly what he did.
Richard, the one team that was unfortunately on the wrong side of this was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with this win by the Miami Dolphins, they were knocked out of playoff contention. But the Steelers are an interesting team in the standpoint that we wrote them off. You know, I mean, once TJ Watt went down, once they were having their issues with the quarterback, we wrote them off. And Rich, I don't know what happened, but they just started winning games, winning games. Mitchell, how does this happen? Mike
Tomlin may still get Coach of the Year without being in the playoffs. I mean, because for 16 straight years now. I mean, this one is the one that he deserves Coach of the Year for, because there's no way they should have ever been in contention for any kind of winning record. I mean, they were 3-7 at one point, I think. And you're telling me they made it all the way back to a winning record from that? I think they went 6-1 down the stretch. Not with Ben Roethlisberger, because every time they're like, oh, well, he's had Ben Roethlisberger. No, it was Kenny Pickett. You know, it was Mitch Trubisky, Najee Harris, you know, Pickens, very inconsistent. TJ Watt was injured majority of the year. It was a great coaching job. Managing men, leader of men. I don't think their defense gave up 20 points over the last 7 games. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Fame coach. You know, I mean, just to not have a losing record over 16 years, Belichick gets a lot of credit. He had Brady. Tomlin had Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger is by no means Brady, and he has never had a losing record. That's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. I think the one factor in this, though, is once TJ Watt went out to start the season, they were slow. And I know you love you some Nicholas John Bosa, Rich.
John.
When this guy comes back and TJ Watt and they go on a run like they did, and all of a sudden this defense is looking like a top-tier defense in this league, and they're winning game after game after game, how is he not in that conversation as well?
What conversation?
For Defensive Player of the Year.
TJ Watt?
I mean, as a game changer, Rich. How is this guy
Mitchell, he played 5 games, 6 games. That's why. You don't get in the conversation. That's like putting Purdy in the Rookie of the Year conversation. You don't get in there 6 games. Like, I couldn't believe he got I think he got the Pro Bowl. Like, that's kind of a slap in the face. You know, I mean, for the guys who've played the whole season, like, impact player, all that, congratulations. But 6 games, nah. Like, there's dudes out there that's been grinding every week in and week out. And for you to, you know what I mean? That's a story for a different day. But
fair enough, you know. But let's keep it in the family a little bit. His brother J.J. Watt, and we'll talk about your Niners because we have to. His brother J.J. Watt is retiring now, and the Cardinals, unfortunately, had to go out and give him his farewell tour against your 49ers. Brock Purdy, Rich. Brock Purdy and the Niners look very, very, very much so for real. This is no, new event that is occurring. But when you go and slap 38 points on the board, just super nonchalant, and win, what is it, 5th game in a row for Brock now? What's going to stop the 49ers?
That's a great question. I don't know. They need to shore up that run game. I mean, run defense, though. That's one thing. Diamador Lenore is going to have to grow up really fast in these playoffs, because he's had a rough couple goes at it. Devontae, anybody would have had a rough go at it. But this week, the big play to AJ Green early in the game is a play, people are going to take shots. And Tayshaun Gip is playing some of his best football, man. He's played well for a long time. And I know he's a little older now, but he got a lot of picks under his belt. And it's just he's in rhythm right now. Called it when Jimmy Ward came back. I said they would keep him and Talanoa Hufanga together. And I knew that they would keep working well and Jimmy would be on the nickel. They'd get their best 11 out there. And 2 interceptions in this game were huge. But it was really cool to see JJ, 2 sacks in his final game. He's calling it quits. He's about to be a dad. Class of 2011, another class of 2011 alumni. And it's really cool to see. He's a Hall of Famer. He'll get his gold jacket in 5 years, and hopefully I'll be at the ceremony.
Well, Richard, in this game, and this is a rare stat, but we're gonna call it. Brock Purdy is the 2nd highest passer rating through 5 career QB starts, behind only Kurt Warner. I don't frankly know how that's even possible, but God bless him, man.
Metro, some people are just ready for the moment, and he was ready. I mean, they've averaged 30 points a game since Christian McCaffrey was acquired. I mean, excluding the Kansas City game because he was off of 2 days. So outside of that game, they're 10-0 since then, averaging 30 points a game. Like, he's made a huge difference. And they gave Debo a few reps. He was on a pitch count this week, but gave him some reps, got him in there, got him contact, because you need that going into the playoffs. But the way they were using Elijah Mitchell, Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk went for 1,000 yards. You heard everything coming into camp. Brandon Ayuk is going to go off this year. Brandon Ayuk. And he was really very steady the entire year. Stayed healthy, was consistent through all 3 quarterbacks. He ate with all 3 quarterbacks. Obviously, Trey Lance only played 2 games, but he was a steady part of the ship. And Nicholas John Bosa. Now, they won't let you bet on it no more, Mitchell. They won't let you bet. Like, I'd put my life savings on it.
Well, you would have been right from week 1, Rich. You would have been right from week 1 of the preseason because that's how long you've been tooting it. You've been spot on with a lot, and we got to do a recap session of some of our call-outs because I don't want to brag, but I called Tony Pollard.
You did.
You called Nicholas John Bosa. We had some other good call-outs throughout the year, and I'm sure the rest of this postseason we're going to have ample opportunity to make some predictions. But Rich, I'm going to ask you one more difficult question, and then we'll sign this thing off. But if you were still a member of the San Francisco 49ers going into the wild card weekend, which of the 3 teams would you have most wanted to see as your opponent?
Well,
the Seattle Seahawks, the Detroit Lions, or the Green Bay Packers?
Probably Seattle, just because you know them so well, division opponent, you know what you're going to get. I feel like Kyle has a plan for him. I just feel like it'd be a good game. Those Green Bay would have been fine because Green Bay just doesn't deal with San Francisco well in the playoffs, regardless of where the game is. I mean, you're going all the way back to Kaepernick, going to Green Bay, going to Lambeau and running for 200 or something crazy and taking the win when he took the San Francisco 49ers to the Super Bowl that year. To last year when they went to Lambeau and got the win on their way to the NFC Championship game. 2019, we took them behind the woodshed. So it's just not. Green Bay doesn't have a good track record playing the 49ers in the playoffs, so that would have been fine. But Detroit is just nasty, gritty, grimy, and they're going to get it done. Their offensive line is way better than you think. Their defensive line is way better than you think. They're young in the secondary. They're too young to know any better. They got a good running. They got two good backs. Swift is back. They got a good receiving core. And the more they get Jameson Williams involved, like the more healthy he gets, they're going to be even more dangerous. Jared Goff is an above average starting quarterback. And he showed that this year. He showed it. I think he's top 5 in yards now. And it was a good year for him.
I never thought I'd see that or hear that, Rich. Well, we're going to have an active week here on this podcast. I know we got a couple big-time guests, and then we're going to do a little playoff preview. But, Rich, I'll let you sign us off as we conclude the regular season.
Well, thank you very much this year for rocking with us, for hanging with us, for being here. I know we're not always right. We are a good amount of times. And we appreciate your time, your diligence. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me and Mitch Eisenstein, and we appreciate it. If this is your first time, hit that sub button. It's an entertaining place to be. We'll see you next week. Got some information to give. Got another cool guest. It's going to be fun.